Good morning. This is Tim Elder after a long absence. Long, well, not so long, but I missed 2 days, Friday and Saturday. I apologize. Anyway, but welcome to the King's Report News Hour for the 26th day now in the 10th month of the 16th year of Changi. And last week I had some um, important personal, shall I say, personal or private business to take care of in Japan. And it turned out to be much more involved in time consuming and energy consuming, both physically and spiritually, than I had anticipated. And so I missed doing a King's Report on both Friday and Saturday, which I apologize. Just 2 days, wasn't it? Did I miss three? I think just 2 days, right? Tech team, did I miss three or two? Two, yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah. All right, let's go take our sojourn around the kingdom. And right now, in Chongpyeong, Tennessee, it is in the single digits, 9 degrees and clear. Cold today with plenty of sunshine, 35 degrees for a high. Tonight, partly cloudy and cold, a low of 20 degrees. Father's hometown, North Korea, Hongju, North Korea, or actually, of course, Father Chongju is the county where father's hometown of Sangsari is located. And anyway, it's 24 degrees, mostly cloudy there in Cheongju right now. And this is probably the city of Cheongju rather than the surrounding county. But anyway, I don't think we have a separate report for a separate reading for Sangsari, so this is as close as we can get. 24 degrees and mostly cloudy. 23 degrees for a low tonight, partly cloudy skies tomorrow, hazy sunshine, high of 43. And at the Cheonryung Palace in northeast Pennsylvania, currently 15 degrees and clear, mostly cloudy, breezy and cold, a little accumulation of snow late this afternoon, high of 28 degrees. Tonight, clouds breaking and cold, low of 12 degrees. And at wow, look at this, even in Texas, below freezing. Right now at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, clear and 27 degrees. Mostly sunny today, getting up to 52, which isn't bad, I guess. Tonight, partly cloudy and a low of 38. And then at the Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently 36 degrees and clear, low of 29 tonight, clear skies. Tomorrow, clouds and sunshine, high of 59. At the Gunma Palaces in Japan, mostly clear right now at 43, but I guess the temperature is going to be dropping fast because it's going to get down to 29 degrees during the night under mainly clear skies. Clear skies tomorrow, sunshine and a few clouds, high of 54. Guangzhou, Guangdong province, currently 67 and cloudy. Clear tonight, low of 59. Tomorrow, partly sunny and pleasant, high of 76. All right, let's go to Father's Word. Okay. Um, oh, it's about Jesus. That's interesting. Okay. This is in the book on earthly life in the spirit world, chapter 2, Death and the Spirit World. Interesting. I guess Father wants me to talk about that after all. Okay. Let's see here. What section are we in? We're in section 2, section 2.9. Okay. All right. Jesus taught us everything. 죽고자 하는 자는 살고 살고자 하는 자는 죽는다고 가르쳐 주셨습니다. He taught us that those who seek to die will live, and those who seek to live will die. 세상에 그런 엉터리 같은 말이 어디 있느냐? So where in the world can you find such ridiculous words, or well, some, I guess ridiculous is the right word there. 그런 말이 없습니다. 그런 말은 없습니다. There are no such words. 그러나 그 말은 사실입니다. And yet those words are true. 그러면 죽는 데는 왜 죽느냐? 죽는 목적이 뭐냐? 살기 위해서입니다. So why do you die then? Why do you die? What is the purpose of dying? The purpose of dying is to live. 사는 데는 무슨 목적이 있다는 것입니까? And what is the purpose of living? 살아가는 인간의 목적이 전부 다 다릅니다. All the people who are alive have different purposes. 마음을 다하고 뜻을 다하고 성품을 다하여 주 너의 하나님을 사랑하라는 것은 무엇을 위해서냐? And when it is said to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your will and all your 성품, I guess is character, I think. This is the Korean translation of Hebrew. So for what purpose is that? What purpose is that? 하나님의 아들이 되기 위해서입니다. The purpose is to become a son of God. 하나님을 사랑하기 위해서 목을 내놓으라는 말입니다. So the meaning is to put your neck on the line, put your neck forward, put your neck on the line. In other words, to risk your life, right? For the purpose of loving God. 그 목이 하나밖에 없는데 내놓으라는 것입니다. You only have one neck, but we are told to put it forward. In other words, to sort of, as if on the chopping block, that kind of a imagery here. All right, that's enough. Those couple of paragraphs. So praise God, praise God, praise God. Yes. Well, okay, so I'll just briefly, since Father brought it up, I'll briefly talk about why I was in Japan. I was in Japan for the funeral of my father, who died, passed into the spirit world, unfortunately, without receiving the blessing um, on a Wednesday and then Saturday, which would have been his 99th birthday, turned out to be his funeral instead. And so I went to, and the funeral was performed at a Christian church um, near Osaka, Japan. And it's a very interesting service. I was trying to think, is this a Christian service with Buddhist characteristics, or is this a Buddhist service with Christian characteristics? But after thinking, no, I guess it is a fundamentally Christian service with Buddhist characteristics, very definitely Buddhist characteristics. Most of what happened, I think, people, Christians in America would recognize. There were hymns, a lot of flowers and hymns and prayer and the reading of the Bible, New Testament, of course, New Testament, and yes, and the preacher said a few words. But what happened afterwards, I think, although it's where the most Buddhist aspects, I guess, came forward. 99% of, in 99% of cases in Japan, cremation is the body is cremated, and according to what I researched online, Muslims in Japan have a difficulty with that because in Muslim theology, they want to preserve the body in the ground. And by the way, our community of faith as well would much prefer not to cremate the body. But the reality in Japan, though, is that land for burial is very hard to come by. So anyway, so my father's body was also cremated, and that was kind of, you know, I mean, it's like 72 hours, after he takes his last breath, he's in the oven. And that was a little bit of a thing for me. Um, uh, but then also, you know, what happens after that is the strangest part. So, so the body's in the oven about 2 hours, and they told us that it would take longer because he's a Westerner. I don't know about that, but anyway, that's what we were told. It takes longer for Westerners to burn, apparently. Um, so they bring the Oh boy. So they bring the whole, they bring it out of the oven, okay, and then they bring it into a room, and then six sort of relatives, three on each side. I don't think there was any significance to the number six, but three of us on each side, three, uh, I guess, what do you call them? Anyway, people who were family or, yeah, family, I guess, basically. And we were given a pair of chopsticks. So chopsticks, they're not the usual chopsticks, they're a special kind. And so we're looking down at what, just 2 hours ago was my father's body. And many of the bones are still recognizable. The spine and the leg, the legs, the arms, the big bones are still recognizable, and also the jaw was clearly recognizable. And we're told, okay, now I want you to, and we're given two uh, containers, one larger than the other. The larger one was a bit larger. No, I guess, yeah, I guess the larger one was, maybe, a bit larger than a coffee mug. And the smaller one was, I suppose, maybe a bit smaller than a coffee mug. And we're told, okay, you're going to the funeral director, or the crematorium director is telling us, okay, now you're going to take your chopsticks and you're going to pick up bones from each part of the body and put them in these containers, in these receptacles, starting with the feet. You want to work your way up from the feet up. And so, and we took turns. One person would do it, and then we'd go to the back of the line, and then the next person back of the line, the next person then back of the line, and so forth. And and the director of the crematorium was quite an expert at recognizing which bones were from which part of the body. And as I said, we could recognize the large bones, but like he said, okay, here you got a toe. All right, you can put the toe in there. That's here you have a. Oh, and also the ball joints are very easy to recognize because the balls of the ball joints did not deteriorate in the fire at all. Um, and as chance would have it, this morning in the Korean Hundoke, we were reading about Meshach, uh, or the three Jewish kids who went into the fire because of Nebuchadnezzar. And uh, as it happened, so anyway, that is very. I'm sure it would be very, very strange to Christians in America. To I don't know. I asked my wife, "Is this how they do it in Korea?" And she said, "No, no, no, no. In Korea, after the cremation, then the crematorium sort of smashes everything into powder, and they just give you an urn with powder in it. But in this case, that was not the case. Yeah. So anyway, and well, like I said, Father brought it up, right? He brought it up. I wasn't going to talk about this, but he brought it up. So why does Father have me talk about this? Well, I think the sort of the age-old problem, or the problem that I've been dealing with for a long time, is Japan has a very small minority of Christians. Some say 1%, some say 2%. Recently, I came across for the first time a figure that said 3%. But anyway, it's a small minority of Christians. So how do you connect a culture like that to parents? And well, Father, of course, did that by giving Japan an opportunity to participate in the Providence as the Eve country, as the mother country, providing funds and personnel and manpower to the worldwide Providence. Um, Perhaps that's enough. I don't know. I don't know, but certainly, though. But at some point, though, and I asked my father not long ago. whether he could imagine Christianity becoming the dominant religion in Japan, and he said he could not imagine such a situation. And yeah, I mean that's probably what almost everyone would answer. You ask them then, well, what about where Jesus says that no one goes to the Father but by me? What are you going to do about that? And he had no answer, or at least he could not give me an answer. But I think there has to be an answer to that question. How do we uh, how do we connect uh, Japan now to the true parents? Okay. Family Federation is not doing that right now. They are basically um, sacrificing the country, sacrificing their own membership for the sake of the heretical teaching that is centered in Korea right now. That is satanic because it is a betrayal of our true Father, and unfortunately, many Japanese members of Family Federation are uh, sacrificing their future in the spirit world by participating in that effort. So I don't know. I would when I find an answer, I'll give it to you. But right now, I don't have an answer either. And traveling in Japan, just uh, well, I didn't do a whole lot of travel this time. I was just going from Osaka Airport or Kansai Airport to my hotel, and then to the church, and back to the hotel, and then to the airport a few times. And but just traveling around, you can see these tori, the red gates that the shrines have, the Shinto shrines have. Those are evident throughout Japan, every place you go. And of course, it's either the shrine or it's the Buddhist temples. And you just wonder how does all this get connected to true parents, to true father, especially now, especially now. Okay. Anyway, we shall see, we shall see, we shall see, and I hope that we can find an answer soon enough. Now, speaking of the heresy in Korea, the Korean police today conducted a new set of raids on. Well, here we go. This actually this is a what is this? This is an AFP article. It's AFP, of course, is the French wire service. AP is American, Reuters is British, AFP is French. Anyway, it's published in the Japan Times, but still, let's take a look at it. Okay. So this is a photograph of the Family Federation headquarters in the Chongpadong section of Seoul. The old Chongpadong headquarters church is kind of up the hill behind this, I guess, and can't remember now if it's to the right or to the left. Anyway, it's up above here, this building here. Yeah. All right. And this caption says Unification Church headquarters in Seoul. Police raided the headquarters on Monday and named its leader, talking about Hak Ja-han, as a suspect in the bribery of several high-profile politicians. So basically, they've opened a new case against her, um, and I think the logical thing to expect is that she will be rearrested on these new charges that they are looking to bring. And so the purpose of today's raids was to find evidence for those new charges. South Korean police raided the headquarters of the Unification Church on Monday. Now, I am trying to really a lonely voice crying in the wilderness, but trying to tell people that Family Federation is not the Unification Church. The Unification Church is a community of faith that believes Reverend Sun Myung Moon, True Father Sun Myung Moon, to be the returning Jesus and follows his teachings. And Family Federation is not. They are a separate religion and they have their own theology. And so Family Federation is not Unification Church, but no one's listening to me. but I think it's important to say that as whenever we can, so that we can recover that name Unification Church later on. Uh, and I've explained the history of that term Unification Church before, but it did not come from Father. And also, Unification Church is not the name of any organization. It came from as far as I'm aware, it was a term created by the South Korean press in 1955 when Father was arrested on July 4th and then later tried for a draft evasion and found innocent, found not guilty on October 4th, 3 months later, 1955. And of course, this was involved with the president of Ihwa, who was also the wife of the vice president of the country, uh, trying to use the power of the state to crush Father's ministry in 1955, a year after the HSAUWC was formed. And so, and the South Korean press has used it as to mean a community of faith centering on Reverend Sun Myung Moon. And Father accepted that. He said, okay, yeah. And he himself used the term Unification Church many times. And although in the 1990s, he said, okay, we're no longer going to have the HSAUWC, he still used the term Unification Church or Tongilgo or Unificationism or Tongilgo after that. So Unification Church does not refer to any organization or church, actually. It refers to a sort of an informal community of faith, which, and many people may belong to that. Certainly the Sanctuary Church is Unification Church. But I would not try to say that only the Sanctuary Church is Unification Church. There may be others who accept Father as the returning Jesus and are at least attempting to follow his teachings. If they are sincere in that effort, then I would recognize them as Unification Church. Not members, we don't say members, but shikku, right? This is the word that Father used. So anyway, but that distinction is not really being made by the popular press, and they don't want to bother about this kind of thing. And so they go ahead and call the Family Federation Unification Church. And there's nothing we can do about it, but I think it is important for us to register our objection whenever possible. Named its leader as a suspect, okay, the bribery of several high-profile politicians. The church, known for its mass weddings, is at the center of a mounting scandal in South Korea over alleged payments to lawmakers from both ruling and opposition parties. And again, the church known for its mass weddings, this of course refers to, I suppose the Family Federation also does mass weddings. So I guess technically that is correct. But of course, the Family Federation became a different religion after Father's passing, after September 3rd, 2012. So let's make a distinction that Family Federation was created. It is a new religion that sort of separated from the Unification Church after September 3rd, 2012. But again, AFP is not going to bother with that kind of distinction. Prosecutors raided the church's headquarters in Seoul on Monday, that's today, as well as the imposing countryside residence of leader Han Hak-ja, who is already on trial for allegedly offering bribes to the former First Lady. The Unification Church said it had no comment on the raid. Of course, it's the Family Federation that says it has no comment on the raid, but again, AFP just confusing the two. However, its president said last week that the church felt, quote, deeply responsible for having caused concern to the public, unquote. And this is, lawyers in different countries have different ways of creating apologies that are actually not apologies, non-apologies. And this is the Asian version of a non-apology. Okay, you don't admit wrongdoing, but you do admit to causing concern to the public. Actually, and acknowledged its failure to detect misconduct within the organization at an early stage. Oh my goodness, yes, their pants are on fire for sure. Okay. All right. Uh, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has strongly criticized what he described as political interference by religion without directly naming the church. He asked officials last week to see whether there were grounds to dissolve religious groups that interfere in politics. Members of Lee's own Democratic Party have been implicated in the scandal. And, as I mentioned before, Lee Jae-myung has made it very clear that he intends to wipe the slate clean, completely um, make sure that there is no Unification Church left in South Korea. That's his intention. Now, whether he can do that or not, of course, sanctuary will remain, and so he can't do it completely. But you can dissolve an organization, but he's going to find out that the organization is not the faith. Anyway, and so he's willing to suffer some collateral damage. Maybe some people in his own party will be caught up in this. That's collateral damage, but his main purpose, though, is to get rid of the Unification Church. Ocean's minister Chun Jae-soo resigned last week after being accused of having received about $20,000 in cash, as well as two luxury watches from church officials between 2018 and 2020. Chun called the claims completely false and said he had offered to resign to avoid hurting the work of the ministry and Lee's government. Local media reports had quoted unidentified sources as saying that a former Unification Church official, we're talking about Yoon now, what's his name? Yoon Young-ho, the former World Missions Director. So anyway, Yoon Young-ho told prosecutors about payments to members of parliament from Lee's Democratic Party, including Chun. Chun said last week he would use all legal means to hold accountable false reports. And Lee accepted Chun's resignation, et cetera, et cetera. And so anyway, this is already stuff that we already know. Okay. All right. Um, so what does all this mean? Especially um, since they raided the same offices, several weeks back. One of the things that they did when they raided Hak Jahan's place the first time was that they opened a safe or a closet or a room or something like that, and they found 2.8 billion won. At today's exchange rate, that's just under $2 million. So not an incredible amount of money given the way that the Family Federation operates, but anyway, about roughly $2 million in both in various currencies, Korean currency, Japanese currency, and some U.S. dollars as well. Uh, Maybe other currencies, I don't know. But anyway, there was all this money in the room, and at that time the police did not touch that. They took photographs of it, but didn't touch it. And apparently this time they're going back to see if that same amount of money is still there. 2.8 billion won is still there. And if the pile has decreased, then they'll say, oh, okay, now let's check to see where this money went. Because if it was used to pay for Hak Jahan's defense, then that's a problem because she cannot use public funds to pay for her defense. Or if it was used, in some other sort of well, for example, let's say new bribes maybe were given to some people in an attempt to to get around these charges. But anyway, I'm spending too much time on this. But yeah. Anyway, that's the update on the situation with the Family Federation here. But I do want to emphasize that we need to let people know that Family Federation is not Unification Church. They have their own theology, and it's a different theology from the Unification Church. When I was dealing with the situation where the Family Federation USA was suing the Sanctuary Church in an attempt to get a court to prevent us from using the Tonga mark, which their claims were eventually dismissed. But I did some study on how this whole thing with offshoots of churches and things like that work in the legal system in America. And what I discovered was that a new offshoot from a religion can take the theology with them. They can take the theology. They can have the same theology. That's not a problem. But they cannot take the identity. In other words, they cannot take the name. In that case, the opposite was, or they've taken the well, actually, they've taken the name and the theology. So, but we're not going to bring a suit against them. But they've taken the name, the Family Federation, which they don't deserve, and they've created a new theology. But they've maintained parts of the Father's theology, but they've changed, of course, some of the principal parts. This whole only begotten daughter thing is a complete heresy, as is the heavenly parent and that kind of thing, complete heresy. And anyway, it will run its course, I suppose, and it will die out because God is not behind it. Anyway, so then that's what's going on there. All right. Now, um, yeah, we got the situation in Australia. I know at least 15 people killed there. 16, actually, I think, is the most recent number that I've seen. And at least the son, apparently, is a Pakistani national based in Sydney. And this was targeting a Jewish festival, right? The first day of Hanukkah, the first night of Hanukkah, I'm sorry, the first night of Hanukkah. And it was a father-son team that did the shooting. And one of them, I guess it was the father who had a gun license. So now Australia is looking at the possibility of restricting guns even more, even though they already have the most restrictive, well, except for North Korea, but one of the most restrictive gun laws in the world. So they figure that, well, if they make it even stricter, then we can prevent this kind of thing from happening again. Well, I don't know. Yeah. So we'll see how this situation develops, but it's very, very recent, and it's usually not a good idea to talk about these kinds of things in the early hours or early days, um, because the facts often change. So anyway, that happened in Australia, and let's see, we have Jimmy Lai, a Hong Kong uh, pro-democratic activist, convicted in a landmark national security trial. And also at the same time, Hong Kong's Democratic Party voting to disband itself after decades in the opposition. And so Beijing's hold on Hong Kong um, is becoming even stronger, unfortunately. Yeah. Three government vetted judges found Lai 78 guilty of conspiring with others to collude with foreign forces to endanger national security and conspiracy to publish seditious articles. He was writing for the South China Morning Post a lot, and I remember reading a lot of his stuff in the past. And he always had before Hong Kong was handed over to Beijing by the British. South China Morning Post was, especially this guy was publishing some very good stuff about what was going on with the Communist Party. But unfortunately, he's now completely off the map. Okay. All right, let's see here. And then I wanted to do focus today. Oh yeah, okay. Oh yeah. Rob Reiner found dead along with his wife at their home in Hollywood. And when I first saw this, I thought, uh-oh, but no, that wasn't the case. It turns out, probably it's going to turn out that it was the son who used a knife to stab his parents to death. And that's the kind of thing that occurs when spirit world becomes involved. So, yeah, we'll see how this plays out. This is only hours old as well. This happened Sunday, and so we'll see how this develops as well. But some police are saying they don't know yet. They haven't arrested anybody yet, but some media are already pointing the finger at the son. Okay. All right, so let's go to this story in the Epoch Times about the situation of Nigerian Christians. And the title is that they are caught in a tide of jihadi violence. The plight of Christians received relatively little global attention until the Trump administration threatened to intervene. So let's take a look at this. Nuhu Dauda was on a missionary trip about 125 miles away from his home in Plateau State, Nigeria, when he got a panicked call from his younger brother. He said jihadists had surrounded my home and were chanting that they would kill everyone inside, Dauda, a 67-year-old Christian evangelist, told the Epoch Times. The police helped rescue 5 family members before heavily armed men burned the house to the ground and killed a young fellow evangelist, he said. That was in 2005. Let me see where we are here with this. Okay. In the 20 years since then, I have seen our people massacred, Dauda said. I saw my family members, in-laws, and friends killed. I've carried the bodies of my own and I buried them. The plight of Christians in the country received relatively little global attention until the Trump administration threatened to intervene amid a recent spike in violence to prevent mass killings that suggested amounts to a genocide. The Nigerian government denies claims of religious persecution, rather framing the violence as a security crisis with complex socioeconomic and political roots that impacts people of all faiths. But the increase in brutal attacks on Christian communities by radicalized insurgents in recent years both parallels and intersects a broader rise in violent Islamist extremism across the region. Una grew up in peace with Muslim friends and neighbors in the country's fertile Mid-Belt region. But everything began to change around 2001. It was so strange to us, we never knew that, to see our people killed in a community where Muslims were a minority, but well armed, Dauda said, of radicalized groups that began attacking Christians. They drove us out. While the threat has evolved, some observers trace the root of current violence to the rise of Nigeria's homegrown Sunni jihadist movement more than 2 decades ago. That movement is synonymous with the terrorist group Boko Haram, sometimes referred to as the Nigerian Taliban. Ebenezer Odadere, a senior fellow for Africa Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations, that's an American institute that is both leftist and globalist, believes all problems are downstream of Boko Haram. It's a religious campaign in the sense that this is mass killing initiated by Boko Haram, a group that targets Christians, targets Muslims, targets everybody, because it sees all of them as infidels or apostates, Obadera told the Epoch Times. These are what caskets holding the bodies of 38 Christian villagers. This is in 2021, 4 years ago. It was a government secondary school. Boko Haram, which means loosely Western education is forbidden, has been designated as a terrorist organization by the United States since 2013. It embraces a strict interpretation of Islam that uses extremely narrow criteria to define who counts as a Muslim, according to a Brookings Institution report, another leftist globalist organization. Formed in 2002, Boko Haram began an armed rebellion against the Nigerian government in 2009 and has retained a stronghold in the northeast as well as in neighboring Chad, Cameroon, and Niger, or Niger, I guess that is. Father visited Nigeria in 2011 and met the president and his some of his cabinet members, I believe. I was there in the meeting and at the table. Um, that was 2 years after this started. But I think the way that meeting with Father and the Nigerian officials was a bit the Father's staff, in other words, Young especially and others, kind of a bait and switch situation where and I think the I got the impression then that the Nigerian officials were a bit um, were angry. They felt that Yang had deceived them, and so anyway, Father's understanding of the meeting was different from the Nigerian officials' understanding, and I think this kind of shows how dishonesty or lack of transparency uh, really poisoned the relationship from the beginning. Unfortunately, that's my impression. And what we've seen since then was since 2009, right? Since they began an armed rebellion against the Nigerian government in 2009, and just 2 years later, Father was there, and that could have brought some real spiritual power, but there was no unity. Even though there was a meeting, there was no unity between Father and the president of Nigeria at that time. Good luck was his name, right? Good luck, yeah. Anyway, so that's what happened there. Since then, a mix of violent perpetrators with shifting alliances and feuds has emerged across the north, including the ISIS terror group Al Qaeda and Boko Haram offshoots and affiliates, as well as armed bandits, new cross-border groups, and ethnic militias. Nigeria ranks sixth on the Institute for Economics and Peace Global Terrorism Index 2025. In the northwestern part of the country, where violence has historically been attributed to banditry, Al Qaeda and ISIS affiliates have established a foothold since 2020 and operationalized these cells since 2024, according to a recent analysis by Critical Threats, a project of the think tank American Enterprise Institute. Reports of civil killings in Nigeria vary from 50,000 to more than 100,000 since 2009, with millions more displaced, figures from armed conflict, location, and event data. A US-based monitor show violence targeting Christians has spiked since 2020, but still pales in comparison to the broader surge in overall political violence, which it reports has resulted in far more Muslim deaths. I think what the church official, Young and other church officials were doing then that's their normal way of operating, where they can't fulfill what they know to be Father's actual will, and so they do something that looks something like what Father wants. If you sort of look at it from a distance and squint your eyes, and sort of deceiving both parties. So they deceived Good Luck and they deceived Father, and of course, so now we see the result of that. Unfortunate, but uh, uh, that visit was a tough one. Father really wanted to pour out his love onto Nigeria, but it didn't. I don't. I'm pretty sure it did not work out the way that Father wanted. In 2021, the United Nations estimated 350,000 people had died as a result, directly or indirectly, of ongoing conflict in the country since 2009. While estimates vary, Obadera said, what nobody can doubt is that a lot of people are being killed, and more important is the fact that they're being killed for a religious reason. President Donald Trump in October relisted Nigeria as a country of particular concern, a formal designation given to the world's worst religious freedom offenders. And in a November 20th congressional hearing, State Department officials said they are working on a comprehensive plan to help bolster the country's own security and counterterrorism efforts. Just hours after that hearing, gunmen on November 21 stormed a Catholic school in the Middle Belt, kidnapping more than 300 students and 12 teachers. It was the fourth mass kidnapping that week, and one of the worst in the country's history, surpassing even the 2014 Boko Haram kidnapping of 276 Chibok secondary school girls. Last week, Amnesty International reported more than 1,700 children have been abducted by the group in the decades since. Some of those kids, by the way, have been returned, I believe, according I've seen of these 300 students that were kidnapped on November 21. Some have been returned, I believe, or they escaped. I'm not sure which it is. Kidnapping victims, according to the group, are often kidnapping victims, according to the group, are often forced to fight, marry their captors, or are sold into sex slavery. The wave of violence from November 15 to November 21 also included an attack on a Christian church during a service in which 2 people were killed and 38 kidnapped, as well as the abduction of 24 female students from a secondary school and the murder of 3 people and kidnapping of 64 from their homes. I did cover the gun laws in Nigeria once before, right? And it turned out that it was possible under certain conditions to have guns, but it's pretty restrictive. Okay. On November 24th, Nigerian media reported suspected Boko Haram terrorists abducted 12 women from Borno State and razed a village elsewhere in the state. We hoped the country of particular concern designation by President Trump at the end of October might stabilize the situation, the Most Reverend Wilfred Anabi, a Nigerian Catholic bishop, told lawmakers during the November 20 hearing. But instead, it is deteriorating into one of the worst, most lethal periods for Nigerian Christians in recent memory. While the government has tried to confront the terror threat, Dawda said, this is not the confrontational war that militaries are used to. They hide, attack, pull away, and cover. The government has tried, but they are overwhelmed. The Nigerian government, well, I mean, there's obvious, solution here, right? I mean, I'm sure you're also coming to the same conclusion as me. Let people defend themselves. uh, but the Nigerian government did not respond to requests for comment from the Epoch Times, recently said in a statement posted on X that its security agencies since 2023 have neutralized more than 13,500 terrorists, arrested more than 17,000 suspects, and rescued more than 9,800 kidnapped victims. In May, Amnesty International reported at least 10,217 people had been killed in attacks by gunmen in the 2 years since current President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was elected, mostly in the predominantly Christian Middle Belt states of Benue and Plateau. Such attacks have drawn attention to long-standing conflicts between farmers, who are largely Christian, and Fulani herdsmen, who are semi-nomadic and predominantly Muslim in the Middle Belt. The Nigerian government characterizes this as a land use dispute driven by the climate, resource scarcity, and population growth. According to Open Doors, an organization that tracks persecution of Christians, Fulani militants are responsible for 55% of recorded Christian deaths between 2019 and 2023. The Observatory for Religious Freedom in Africa in July published research showing Fulani militias accounted for 47% of the 36,056 civilian killings between 2019 and 2024, more than 5 times the combined death toll of other prominent terrorist organizations such as Boko Haram and an offshoot known as Islamic State West Africa Province. Most recently, other monitors such as International Bar Association's Eyewitness Global have noted considerable escalation in violence with religious and ethnic dimensions in the Middle Belt. While the 2015 Global Terrorism Index ranked armed Fulani militants the 4th deadliest terror group in the world, the observatory notes they have mysteriously vanished from international rankings despite having become exponentially more lethal. Huh, I wonder why that is. Dauda, the Christian evangelist, says it's a small number instigating and radicalizing an otherwise peaceful population. Most Filanis are innocent. Most want to live a peaceful life and take care of their cattle. Well, in the American West, also there was a lot of trouble between cattlemen and farmers, right? For a period, I guess that's pretty much the 19th century, late 19th century, when farmers began to fence off land. Anyway, so this kind of land use dispute certainly occurs in many parts of the world, but also the article makes it clear that Boko Haram has a very narrow definition of what constitutes a Muslim, and so they're killing anyone who does not fit that definition. Christians and other Muslims, and I guess people of other religions as well. And here, this person with a difficult name told Epoch Times the violence in the Middle Belt is multi-directional and it can't be reduced to a kind of religious war. To focus on the persecution of Christians really doesn't capture the problem. This person said that is not the main conflict. The real threat are the jihadi groups that are expanding, and larger segments of the population are falling under their influence, and they are now competing with the state. So it's about power, I guess, eventually. Power. And sounds like the jihadis are using their religion as a means to gain power for themselves. Some of those groups, such as Islamic State, Sahel Province, are majority Fulani, he said, but operate primarily in majority Muslim states, meaning their civilian victims are mostly Muslims. As the conflict expanded across the region, this person said the most powerful groups concentrated in Mali and Burkina Faso, where many fighters are Fulani. So it's more circumstantial, but also the state has reacted to the insurgency. In many countries in the region, Fulani and other herder ethnicities have long been disenfranchised by the state, this person said, making them a primary target for radicalization. Born a Fulani Muslim, Musa Bello converted to Christianity and became an evangelical preacher, vocal on social media about what he calls a Christian genocide. He is currently in hiding, facing death threats from Islamists and reprisal from the government, he says. Bello told the Epoch Times that he typically visits many remote villages only accessible by motorcycle or on foot. He described going to a village in Plateau State for outreach. We preached the gospel to them. We did medical research outreach, shared Bibles, and we left. Then, fast forward this October, we went back for a follow up, he said. The whole village had been wiped out. You stumble on human skeletons, you stumble on a body that is not even decayed. Horrific things, Bello said. Sean Nelson, attorney with Alliance Defending Freedom, recalls visiting victims in the aftermath of a Christmas Eve 2023 attack that killed more than 200 people across mostly Christian villages in the same region. They went after the pastors' homes. They went after the churches first. The first village we went to, there was a pastor who the militants came to his house on Christmas Eve, took him and his family, torched his house, walked him out behind the church, and beheaded him. Every witness told him the attackers came in with machetes, shouting Allahu Akbar, and we will kill Christians, Nelson said. John Stewart, an American attorney and pastor who regularly travels to Africa to teach and train Christian leaders, described Nigerian communities devastated by systemic violence and displacement. I went to the relocation centers. These are Christians that have been driven out of their villages by Fulani Muslims, with the military looking the other way, he told the Epoch Times. They're sleeping on cement floors in churches. They didn't have anything other than shovels and rakes to defend themselves. Yeah, there you go. They didn't have anything other than shovels and rakes to defend themselves. Seems like there's something that can be done there, right? Give them something else, something a little more lethal, perhaps. I'm not talking about bear spray either. Okay, they need some rods of iron. Others are behind us. Both Dauda and Bello say Fulanis are coming to Nigeria from other countries. I had an encounter with one, and I'm Fulani by tribe, Bello said. When I spoke to him, I understood that this is not Nigerian Fulani. He told me he was from Mali, and his group is headed to Benue State. Nigeria's borders with Niger and Chad are easy to penetrate, he said. They are all using sophisticated weapons, machine guns, AK 49s, RPGs that even our military are not using, Bello said. Okay, so this thing has been happening for 2 decades, but the Nigerian government has never brought a single perpetrator to justice. Dauda marveled at the sight of Fulani herdsmen carrying machine guns. So someone's behind it, obviously. There's some money behind it. A Fulani man takes care of his cow. That is his bank account, the future of his children. How are such innocent Fulanis operating such guns? He said. Well, I think it's pretty obvious who would be behind this. I think um, Iran comes to mind, right? And perhaps others. It means there are others who are behind this, and I want the world to know that they have been brainwashed. He said targets their target is to grow across the nation. That's why you hear of killings in churches in the South. These are what the Nigerian government has framed attacks on Christian communities such as Daudas in the country's middle belt or north central region as ethnic land use disputes as distinct from the terror of jihadists in the northeast or the anarchy of bandits in the northwest. But amid transnational expansion of Islamist extremism, with weapons and fighters flowing across porous borders, some analysts say such distinctions are vanishingly relevant and a distraction from the all consuming threat of violent fundamentalism. Okay, so the article goes on for a while here. What's this? A defensive trench. Okay. Not sure what that's going to do. Seems pretty, I don't know. How deep is that? It doesn't look very deep. I mean, this is a bush, right? So it doesn't look all that deep to me, but I don't know. Yeah, so it goes on for a while here. Okay. Well, that's about all we need to do on that. We don't have any more time. Okay. All right, let's see what else is going on here. Oh yeah, Zelensky offering to give up a NATO membership, but won't budge on territorial concessions. Well, I don't see this as too significant because his NATO membership dream was not going to happen anyway, and so he just gave something up that he didn't have in the first, that he didn't have in the first case. And some people are treating this as a big concession, but I don't agree with that. I don't think it really changes the what is going on in Ukraine. Um, and he's refusing to give up territory. Well, so all right. Without U.S. support, then I think that also is going to change. At some point, he's going to have to give up territory as well. Okay. Ah, boy. Well, President Trump really needs to do something about that Ukraine situation quickly because China is not going to wait around. Democrat runs Chicago 9-shot Friday into Sunday morning. Okay, so pretty much standard operating procedure there. All right, and I think that's pretty much all that we need to do today. Right. All right, so thank you for joining us this morning, and let's pray that God's will can be done. Godspeed and may his kingdom come quickly.